I'm a civil engineer, which means I can't help myself. I always double-check numbers. When I bought my house in Reno in December 2022, the very first thing I did wasn't moving boxes or hanging curtains. It was checking the listing specs against my own measurements, square footage, ceiling heights, wall lengths. Right away, something was off. Not by much, maybe 40 square feet, but enough to bother me. The house was nothing unusual, a 1970s ranch. Single story with a partially finished basement. Simple footprint, easy to figure out. But when I compared my sketch to the listing, there was space that didn't add up. At first, I blamed realtor error. It happens. But then I noticed the built-in bookshelf in the living room. It stuck out just a little too far, making the wall proportions feel wrong. I brushed it off as old 70s design quirks. Still, the missing space nagged at me. One Sunday, I took detailed measurements wall to wall. That's when I saw it. The back hallway behind the bookshelf should have been 5 feet deeper. Instead, it ended flat. That night, I pressed my hand to the paneling. Hollow. Not drywall hollow, empty space hollow. I told myself it was probably an old utility chase, but the space seemed too large, too intentional. A week later, curiosity won. I pulled out the lowest shelf and found faint seams in the wall behind it. Not cracks, seams. When I tapped, one spot sounded softer, waist height, about 2 feet wide. Exactly where a hidden door would be. For 3 days I stared at it. Finally, on Friday night, I wedged in a pry bar. The panel groaned and swung inward. Behind it was a narrow, windowless room. Bare drywall, one light dangling from the ceiling, wires exposed. No furniture. Just a faint chemical smell, sharp, like rubbing alcohol. And on the ceiling, bolted into the joists, was a bracket. The kind you mount a camera on. The room was spotless. No dust, no cobwebs, no bugs. Just empty space, unnervingly clean. I stepped inside, checked the corners. Nothing. No squatters, no signs of use. Just the bracket. I shut the door, slid the bookshelf back, and told myself maybe it was some contractor's idea of security. But why seal it? Why hide it? The more I thought about it, the less sense it made. And then one night, around 2 a.m., I woke to a noise. Subtle but distinct. A hinge settling, a floorboard pressed. I crept into the hall, barefoot, mag light in hand. The bookshelf was open an inch. Just an inch. But enough. I didn't check further. I walked straight out the front door and called the police from my driveway. They searched the house. Nothing. No forced entry, no one inside. The officers told me to change the locks, add security. One suggested maybe the room was for surveillance, Airbnb-style setups, owners spying on guests. "We've seen it before," he said. That was enough for me. Within a week, I started planning to sell. Now, everywhere I go, I can't help myself. I count walls. I trace floor plans. If the numbers don't add up, I want to know why. Because somewhere in Reno, someone built a secret room for watching, and I lived in it. Without knowing. I bought my house in Santa Fe in February 2023, right after the New Year market dip. I'm an architect, so I felt confident taking on something older. A house with quirks that needed some attention, but not a full gut job. The adobe-style ranch I chose was perfect. One story, solid bones, and just enough character to keep me busy. The first week was bliss. I painted walls, rearranged furniture, stacked books in corners until I got around to putting up shelves. At night, I'd eat takeout on the floor and enjoy the silence. It finally felt like I had something of my own. The first odd thing was small. While putting up shelves in the guest room, I noticed the wall cavity felt too deep. Years in the field give you a sense for this, how far a screw should go, the thickness of drywall. This didn't feel right. When I tapped it, the sound dragged hollow, like there was more space than there should be. I brushed it off as shoddy construction. Santa Fe is full of quick remodels where corners get cut. By week 2, things got stranger. Groceries started disappearing. At first, I blamed myself. Moving is chaotic. Stress makes you forget. But then it happened too often. A cheese stick gone. A carton of eggs lighter than I remembered. Half a burrito missing when I knew I'd left it. I started counting food before work. And still, when I got home, something would be gone. Then came the smell. Faint but clear. Tobacco smoke. Not incense, not fireplace, cigarette smoke. I don't smoke. And the previous owner, a yoga instructor, had proudly told me the place had never been smoked in. I walked every room, sniffing corners like a bloodhound, but it was always fleeting. Just a trace, then gone. I tried to distract myself with a project. I decided to knock out a small alcove in the living room for a recessed shelf. Simple work. Measure score, check the studs. But when I cut a test hole, I froze. The cavity wasn't 4 inches like a standard wall. It wasn't 6 inches like old plaster. It was nearly a foot deep. Inside I found trash, a crumpled fast food wrapper, a cigarette butt with ash still clinging. This wasn't bad construction. Someone had been living in there. I patched the hole and just sat staring at it, waiting for, I don't even know what. That night, I needed proof. Proof that I wasn't losing my mind. The next day, before leaving for work, I set my phone to record on the counter. When I came home 6 hours later, I played it back. At first it was faint, but then clear, the soft creak of movement, a cough muffled by insulation. And at one point, unmistakable, the snap of a lighter. I called up a contractor friend and told him I'd found a structural issue in the wall. He came over that Saturday. We opened up a bigger section of the wall in the guest room. And inside we found bedding, thin blankets laid across the insulation, and a small duffel bag shoved into the corner. My friend stepped back like he'd just touched a live wire. "You need to call the cops now," he said. The police didn't laugh. They didn't roll their eyes or tell me I was mistaken. They moved through the house with grim efficiency, checking vents, closets, and crawl spaces. They found a narrow opening in the wall that led up to the attic. Someone had been living between the walls, moving around at night while I was at work or asleep. The duffel bag had trash, cigarette packs, and a cracked phone with no SIM card. The intruder wasn't there, though. The officers thought he must have slipped out while we were making the call. One of them said, almost apologetically, "It happens more than you think. Transients find these old houses easy to get into. You're lucky you found it when you did." Lucky didn't feel like the right word. That night, I couldn't stay in the house. I grabbed a bag and booked a hotel. Sitting there with every light on, it hit me. Someone had been in my house. They were close enough to hear me brush my teeth, smell my dinner. The house wasn't structurally unsafe, but I couldn't shake the feeling. It was ruined for me. The violation felt too personal. 6 months later, I sold it at a loss. The law required me to disclose what happened in the paperwork, which made for awkward conversations with buyers. One person eventually bought it as a rental, probably thinking the story added character. As for me, every place I've lived since, I check. I measure walls, inspect the attic, and press my nose to vents before I sleep. Because once you've heard a stranger cough inside your walls, you never stop listening for it. When I bought my house in Bakersfield, it felt like I'd finally found my peace. I was 29, working as a pediatric nurse, pulling long shifts at the hospital. For years, I bounced between small apartments and roommates who never matched my schedule. The house wasn't big, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, creaky hardwood floors, but it was mine. For the first time, I had a place where I could come home from a 12-hour shift, drop my bag on the same hook, and know no one else had touched a thing. The quiet was everything to me. At the hospital, there were kids screaming and machines beeping constantly. I needed nights where the loudest sound was the fridge humming. My routine was simple: dinner, shower, folding laundry in front of the TV, then bed. Sometimes I'd leave my scrubs in the washer overnight and deal with them in the morning. Nothing dramatic, just the small routines that made it feel like home. But then, little things started to feel off. It began with groceries. A granola bar or 2 missing from the box. At first, I thought maybe I ate them without remembering. Then one morning, I opened the fridge and found an empty Tupperware container on the counter. I was sure I'd left leftovers in it. I shrugged it off. Maybe I was scatterbrained from night shifts, but it kept happening. Not every day, not every week, but enough that I started double-checking. I'd leave a bottle of iced tea on the shelf, only to find it half empty the next day. I told myself it was all in my head, but the rational side of me started whispering that something was wrong. Then came the noises. My bedroom was right below the attic hatch. One night, maybe 3 weeks after moving in, I woke up at 2:30 a.m. to what sounded like faint shuffling above me. It wasn't the usual creaks from the house settling. This sounded heavier, like something or someone was up there. I held my breath and listened until it stopped. The next morning, I laughed it off at work, joking with a fellow nurse that my old house sounded like it was haunted. But once I noticed it, I couldn't unhear it. The noises came back. Little taps, scuffs, sometimes a long pause followed by another shuffle, always between 2 and 4 a.m. I bought traps, thinking it was a raccoon or an oversized rat, but nothing ever showed up in the traps. No droppings, either, and rodents don't unscrew the cap off a soda bottle. The tipping point came one Saturday morning. I'd tossed laundry in the dryer the night before and left it folded on my dresser. When I went to grab my scrubs for work, I noticed the neat stack was messier than I'd left it. The shirt on top was unfolded, like someone had picked it up and put it back. I don't live with anyone. No one had a key. That was the first time my heart actually raced. I started paying more attention to the small things, the angle of the blinds, the way I left my shoes by the door. Most of the time, nothing seemed off, but twice I swear the blinds were tilted differently. Another time, a kitchen chair was pulled slightly farther out from the table. Then one morning, I walked into the hallway and saw the attic hatch open. Just a couple of inches, but it wasn't flush. I stood there staring at it until I convinced myself I'd bumped it while cleaning. But I hadn't been up there. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Around 3:00 a.m., I woke to the distinct sound of something heavy thumping overhead. My hand shot to the flashlight I kept on the nightstand. I sat there, staring at the hatch. By morning, I'd had enough. After work, still in my scrubs, I dragged a chair under the hatch, pulled the cord, and lowered the ladder. The smell hit me right away. Not awful, just stale like unwashed clothes and old food wrappers. I climbed a few steps, shining my light around, and there it was. A pile of blankets against the far wall. Next to it a camping lantern, burnt candles, a backpack, empty granola wrappers, and, worse, my ceiling vent. My bedroom's vent faced straight down at my bed. From the attic, someone could have sat there, watching me. I scrambled down the ladder, slammed the hatch shut, and called the police. They came quickly. 2 officers, flashlights in hand. They searched the attic but found no one. Just the evidence. The blankets, wrappers, a few personal items, a lighter, a notebook. The window in the attic had been opened, the screen removed. The officers said it looked like someone had been living up there for weeks, maybe longer. They asked if I wanted to stay while they investigated. I said no. That night, I packed a bag and checked into a hotel near the hospital. I never went back to sleep in that house. Eventually, I sold it. Here's the thing, I thought I was careful. I locked doors, checked windows, but none of that mattered when someone already had a place above me, moving while I slept, eating my food, watching through vents. Now, whenever I move into a new place, the first thing I do isn't unload boxes. It's check the attic, the basement, every crawl space. I shine a flashlight through every vent. Because once you know someone can live above you quietly, long enough to learn your patterns, you never stop checking. I still see that attic hatch in my mind, sometimes, just hanging open enough to suggest someone's presence. It still gives me chills, and I wonder how many nights I brushed my teeth or folded laundry while someone crouched above, memorizing the sound of my footsteps. I moved into a small brick duplex in Pittsburgh in the summer of 2023. It was my first place on my own, and even though it needed some work, I was proud of it. I run a small online marketing business, so my hours are all over the place. I often spent nights glued to my laptop until dawn. One of the first things I bought for the house was a doorbell camera. My mom laughed at it, but I knew she meant it seriously. It seemed like a good idea. I was in a neighborhood I didn't know, living alone, often awake when everyone else was asleep. That little camera at the front door felt like a safety net. It became part of my nightly routine. Before I'd shut down for the night, I'd check the footage from the past hour, kind of like flipping through a diary of the house. Usually, it was just a raccoon waddling across the yard or the neighbor's cat triggering the motion sensor. But one Tuesday morning, I saw something different. At exactly 3:17 a.m., a man appeared in the footage. He walked up my path, stopped in front of my door, and stared directly into the camera for about half a minute. He didn't knock, didn't say anything. He just stood there, then turned and left the way he came. I replayed it 3 times, trying to convince myself he was just drunk or confused. But the way he moved was unsettling. It wasn't sloppy. He seemed deliberate, like he knew exactly what he was doing. 2 days later, Thursday morning, the same thing. Exactly at 3:00 a.m., same man, same routine. By Saturday, I couldn't brush it off anymore. A pattern had formed, and once I noticed it, I couldn't ignore it. I'm a researcher by nature. I started documenting. I saved the clips, zoomed in on stills, tried to study the details. Mid-40s, medium build, jeans, plain shirt, dark hair cut close. No logos, no distinct features. He didn't carry anything. What bothered me most wasn't what he did. It was what he didn't do. No knocking, no trying to open the door. Just a stare as if he knew I'd be watching later. Every night, always just after 300 a.m. I scrubbed back and forth on the footage, trying to figure out where he came from. He always entered from the left edge of the frame and left the same way. No car headlights, no other angles. He just appeared and disappeared, always on schedule. After a week, I couldn't sleep through it anymore. I started setting an alarm for 300 a.m., opening the live feed and waiting. The first night I did it, I almost wished I hadn't. At 3:17 he appeared, just like always. Same pace, same direction. He stepped up to my porch, lifted his chin, and locked eyes with the camera. Watching it live was worse than playback. He wasn't just a figure on video. He was right there, staring at me while I stared back. It felt like we were both keeping an unspoken appointment. The next day, I called the police non-emergency line. I explained everything. The time, the repetition, the clips. The dispatcher was polite, but not exactly concerned. "Send us the footage," she said. "We'll have patrol cars keep an eye out." I sent them the footage. But nothing changed. The man kept coming. Some nights he skipped, but never more than one at a time. It was like he wanted me to relax before reminding me I shouldn't. The psychological weight of the time started to get to me. All evening, I dreaded 300 a.m. Midnight felt like a countdown. 200 felt like a warning. And when the alert chimed, I already knew what I'd see. Then one night, he broke the pattern, not by changing the time, but by changing himself. It was the 12th visit. I was sitting in the living room, porch light on, live feed running. At 3:18, he was there again, but this time when he reached the porch, he didn't just stare, he smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smallest curl of his lips, like he was acknowledging the routine. Like he knew I was awake this time. That unsettled me more than anything. It meant this wasn't random. He wasn't just some wanderer. He was aware. I dialed 911 while he was still standing there. I told the dispatcher, "He's here right now. He comes at the same time every night. Please send someone." By the time the police arrived, he was gone. The officer walked the street, checked alleys, porches, nothing. The camera showed him leaving, just like always, and then nothing. The officer shrugged. "Keep your doors locked," he said. "We'll file a report." And just like that, the visit stopped. A week passed. Then 2, then 3. The police never found him. I asked my neighbors if they'd seen anything unusual, but no one had. He was there, and then he wasn't. That was almost worse. People don't keep up a routine like that and just stop. Rituals transfer. To this day, I still set my alarm sometimes. 3:15 a.m. I wake up, pull up the live feed, and watch. I still don't know who he was. But I'll always wonder how he hit the same time every night. How he always vanished without a trace. And that smile, the one time he broke routine, still sticks with me. It didn't feel like a goodbye. It felt like a "see you around."